Welcome to Surviving Roots, the podcast where we navigate the messy, beautiful work of healing and growth. I'm your host, Cari Fund, and this is your space to breathe, reflect, and find strength. Whether you're breaking free from old patterns, healing from loss, or rebuilding your story one small step at a time, you're in the right place. So take a deep breath, give yourself this time, and let's uncover the tools to move forward with courage. This podcast is for you. My guest today is Lauren Smallcomb, certified mind-body practitioner, trauma survivor, and author of the memoir, Golden Child, My Descent to Scapegoat and Rise to Freedom. Lauren began her career as an ER nurse, later becoming a doula and a nutritional therapist, before her own breaking point pushed her into a deep mind-body healing. After making the painful choice to walk away from a dysfunctional family system, she rebuilt her life and co-founded Flourish Therapy with her husband, helping others heal from childhood trauma. In Golden Child, she shares her journey as the family's favored daughter, the good one, and how that golden role shattered when faith and politics collided with love and identity. It's a story of estrangement, grief, and ultimately reclaiming her authentic self. Lauren now lives in northern Thailand with her husband, kids, and pets. It's nice to meet you, Lauren.
It's so good to meet you, Cari. Thank you so much.
First, congratulations on the launch of your book. How does it feel?
It feels really good. It's fun that we're talking on launch week because some of my other interviews have, been beforehand, but this is actually the week when we're recording, the week that it came out. And it feels like way more feelings than I thought would be associated with it. We just usually think of the really positive feelings when we think of a big accomplishment like this. But yeah, there's been some other feelings too. So I'm just trying to be here for all of it, like just make space for whatever shows up on any individual particular day and ride the waves.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, excitement, fear. I can only imagine, but it's great that you're here for it all.
Yep.
Well, first of all, what's it like living in Thailand? Before we jump in, because when I read that in your bio, I was like, wow.
Yeah, that's one of the pieces that people are like, wait, what? Tell me a little bit more about this random detail. Yeah, Thailand has been an incredibly welcoming, gracious, comfortable place for us to live. We've been here almost a decade, which is crazy
Wow.
to think about. We'll get more into it in my story, but we were in quite a religious upbringing, and it ended up pushing us towards missions work. So we actually ended up coming here as missionaries, which, for those who aren't familiar with that term, we were coming to bring the love of God to Thailand, which I kind of laugh about because the love of God is probably everywhere and you don't need to bring it places. But
It's a good point.
it it is where we were at the time. And I'm just trying, me and my husband are both trying really hard to not like hide those parts of our journey that are kind of, now when we look back, are kind of embarrassing, honestly, and cringeworthy in a lot of ways. So that is why we came here. We were going to do member care and support. My husband's a clinical counselor, and at the time I was a nurse and a nutritional therapist. I hadn't yet become a mind body practitioner, but that's why we ended up here. And we left that work several years ago, but we loved it so much here. We were just like, why would we leave when we're so
Yeah.
comfortable? Our kids are so established. We're in the rhythms of life. And it's really a very safe country for us to live in. And there's not a lot of the polarization like that is going on in the States, or
Yeah.
things like school shootings and school situations with kids. It's just not something that we deal with at all here. So all of those factors kind of helped us decide to stay here. And it's beautiful. It's warm. The food is great. The people are so kind and generous. We speak Thai, but it's not very good. Like we sound like a 3-year-old because it's a hard language for Westerners to learn. But they're just so kind and gracious, and we feel very loved and welcomed here, and that's such a gift.
Wow, that is so beautiful. I'm so happy for you. What a journey.
Thank you. Yes, a journey, exactly.
Well, you've definitely been on a journey. I can relate to a lot of your experience with regards to dysfunctional and toxic family systems, estrangement. So let's just dive in.
Let's do it.
So, how would you describe a dysfunctional or toxic family?
Hmm. One of my favorite quotes about this, I wish I had it here. I should have jotted it down, but it's basically this idea that a family where you cannot be both held and free, where you can't belong and be your authentic self, family systems that don't allow for both of those kind of polarities that we need in human relationships to thrive are families that are unwell and that are dysfunctional. And there's a whole spectrum of like dysfunctional family systems, all the way to like a very rigid, toxic, narcissistic family system. But the basic tenets are similar, that people are put into roles, that people are controlled through the conditioning and the expectations of the family culture, um, that there's not needs being met, but kind of just social, like having a roof over your head and having your physical needs provided for. Those don't um, don't mean that there's not dysfunction. And I think
Mhm.
that's something that we're all waking up to, is that there's a lot of emotional neglect and emotional abuse that happens in family systems. And just because all the exterior needs are being met does not mean that it's a safe, loving, attuned household.
Yeah. I almost think that can even make it worse sometimes when the exterior needs are being met and it looks to the outside world. I almost feel like in my situation that even brought a little more shame. Like I should be grateful that at this, but not this. And I don't know. I think that's what kept me in so long. And one thing I'd like to ask you is, was there like a specific moment you can remember when you're like, wow, this is dysfunctional, or I'm in a toxic family relationship?
Mm. Well, first, I just relate to that so much, of how much we gaslight ourselves when
Yeah.
we did have, even some of us had a lot. Like I was given a lot of material. I was the youngest and I was the golden child, so I was given basically whatever I wanted when it came
Mhm.
to the prettiest dolls and the nicest material things. And so I think that is such a good point you bring up, that we almost, it's harder for us to see if there was physical neglect, or physical abuse. It's easier maybe to accept, although it's still hard to see. Even with the
Yeah.
most egregious abuse, children are wired to protect their parents' um, you know, image, and to assume that their parents were good, even if they
Yeah.
weren't good.
Yeah.
But your question about a time, um, I think a lot for me, and maybe this is true for other people, but I found a lot of the connection points that came in hindsight for me. A lot of them weren't like in the moment when the trauma was happening. It was like looking back on it and realizing how dysfunctional the family system was. But yeah, there definitely was times in the process of the estrangement happening for me where I realized, oh wow, this is so dysfunctional. This is like effed up. This is so manipulative. This is so coercive. This is so unloving, so unsupportive. Like there were definitely those moments where was like glaringly obvious. But
Hmm.
you know, it takes us time to connect the
Yeah.
dots and put the puzzle pieces together.
Yeah. I can relate to that. How long are you estranged to both parents or just one?
Yeah, I'm estranged to from my whole family of origin, so brother, sister, mom, and dad, and
Okay.
that happened in 2020. So it's been about 5 years.
Been about 5 years.
Um, the pre-estrangement, I would call it, happened in 2015, 16, and that was like when the first big fracturings happened. And before that point, nothing had happened at all. So my story, I want to give a voice to golden children, because um, it can be also very confusing if you were raised with all of these gifts and all of these oh, you're adored, you're loved, you're welcomed, you belong. And then you change and you evolve it all, which is bound to happen because
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, as humans, we're evolving all the time
Yeah.
and shifts are happening. But these rigid family systems cannot make space for those shifts. So what
Yeah.
do? They panic and then they scapegoat you.
Mm-hmm.
So that scapegoating of me started in like 2016. And then we tried to patch it up and tried to like do mediation and tried to make it work. And when I say we, largely me,
Mm-hmm.
because I absolutely refused to accept a relationship without my family. It seemed like a crazy idea. How could
Yeah.
that be? Right? We
Yeah.
just we fight it until we no longer can fight it because it's not going to change.
It's not going to change, and it's really hard to when you've seen behind the drape or
Yes,
the curtain, and then you
and
can't unsee it, and then you realize, wow, I want to heal, I want to feel better, I want to be better, and you just can't do those things in the same environment that's breaking you.
that's right.
It's impossible.
Yep.
Are your siblings estranged, or is it just you?
It's just me. Yeah, they're
Okay.
all still a family unit. I'm the which is crazy because my sister was actually the scapegoat and I was the golden child and we traded places, which is another thing I like to bring awareness to because these roles are flexible. Like they just want family systems just need someone to fill the roles. They don't care
Yeah.
who fills it.
It's like an
And so
audience.
that's right. It really is. As soon as I was scapegoated, she kind of we kind of swapped spots and she went into the golden child role, so she is now in that role. And they all have the same narrative
Yeah.
of me. Yeah,
Yeah. It's just a different role, a different prison. It's like, I don't know.
different role, different prism.
Yeah. Well, you wrote this beautiful book. I would love to know what inspired you to write and share your story and what makes your story unique.
Yeah. um Well, I was reading memoirs like crazy. I love memoirs. And I just kept thinking, wouldn't it be so cool to write my story one day? But then I was looking up all the statistics about, people who start writing and they never finish, and it's really hard to get a book to the market. And I was just like, no, no, no. So I kept thinking of it and stopping many times. And then finally in 2022, I decided to do it and I decided to start writing. And I think for me, a few reasons kind of went behind why I did it. One, not everyone in these situations can talk publicly about them for whatever reason, like logistical liability, whatever. And I felt like I know my family and I know that they are not going to find their way back to me. And some people might say, how do you know? And I just know history is showing itself to be true. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was like, well, I have this story and the bridge is already burned. Like they're not, I put the ball in their court, telling them I was open to repair and that I needed them to try and repair if they wanted me back in their life, and they never responded. So it's like I have this story. Do I want to use this story to help other people who aren't talking publicly about their story because of whatever reason? And I also have a really good support system with my partner, who's an incredible resource for me in my mental health. So I felt like I could do this hard work of writing a story. I mean, going through your own personal story, especially when there's traumatic loss and grief, is super painful. So the
Mm-hmm.
actual writing process in and of itself cost me so much on my body and my mind, but I just felt like I had the friendships and the partner resources to do it, and that it would be a gift to other people facing estrangement. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and there's so much healing. I don't even think people realize there's so much healing that happens even between the words that you're writing. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, when you were writing your stories, we were like, oh, well, maybe that wasn't this bad, or maybe, okay, maybe I'm being dramatic. Did you gaslight yourself at all through your writing process until maybe like an editor or a friend read something and they're just like, wow, like, and then they give you a reality check with, yes, it was that bad, or yes, that really is extremely toxic.
so much gaslighting throughout the process. And like even reading the scene, like I would do a scene, I would write a scene and then I would like bring it to my husband, who thankfully he's been around. We were high school sweethearts, so he knows my family
Mhm.
almost as well as I do because he grew up with them too. So I would be like, is this actually what happened? Like I would question
Yeah.
myself and my own remembrance of the story. And he'd be like, that's exactly how I remember it too. So it was this constant, like, I wanted to make sure I was telling the truest story that I could tell. And it did cause like the mental gymnastics and hula hoops that I was jumping through, trying to make sure um, it was what I said, and also was it even bad, or am I reading into this? Am I expecting more out of a relationship than is even reasonable? And then yes, having different editors read it and coaches and just seeing them understand the story and
Hmm.
it all come together and the light bulbs for them has been super humbling.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, so what was it like setting the stage for estrangements? Like, did you express boundaries and your needs and they just completely ignored them? Or was it a clean break, or did it take like a while for the estrangement really to get
Mm.
into process?
I find this to be one of the hardest questions to explore because it's like, oh, estrangement is so complex. And I know you get that.
Yeah.
It's so nuanced how it kind of happens. So a big part of the book is that year 2020 when it happened, because I wanted to really get clear on what exactly did happen. So a higher like overview of that, not the 4 chapters about it, um, is basically we started having diverging views on like socio-political issues.
Hmm.
And we were in this high control religion and high control family system. And my role in that had been compliance, unquestioning compliance and loyalty. And that's what I was so willing to offer for so many years. It was what I got in exchange for the golden child role. I say I was in a golden cage and my cage was filled with golden things, but I had to stay in the cage. And there's a quote that I start the book with that says, those who do not move do not notice their chains. And that was me. I
Ooh,
never, right? That quote
jeez. Yeah.
sits with me. Um, I never moved from that position of compliance, but as soon as I did, the chains went taut and pulled on me. And that was when the division kind of cracked open, the fracture happened. And at that point, they could no longer see me. I mean, it was pretty immediate how quickly their posture towards me changed. It was like I
Mhm.
went from beloved, delighted in daughter to enemy territory
Yeah.
really, really quickly.
Yeah. I can relate to that. I've been estranged from my mother for almost 16 years now. My father's still in my life. He's a narcissist and toxic. And my brother and I have a very close relationship finally after a lot of work,
Yeah.
because they really needed us to sort of be enemies to play the
Yep.
part. But when I think about like, well, I know the date, I know exactly the call, the hang up, the day that my estrangement happened, but it's
Wow.
so interesting. It it almost felt like a clean break after decades of all the pain and the drama, and it I feel like it's clean because it really showed me that my mother, if I didn't fit into the, for you say cage, but if I didn't fit that role, I
Hmm.
wasn't useful because she needed a scapegoat, she needed somebody. So when she saw
Yes.
that I saw what was happening and I just had enough, I just wasn't useful anymore. And it's so interesting. I just felt like it was a pretty clean break. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So I can
Wow.
relate to that. I still have chills from that quote that you just said. Wow.
That's wild.
Well, you have a lot of interesting themes in your book because with the patriarchy, there's some white supremacy mentions religion. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Well, I think my dad's okay, so in our family system, my dad was kind of the most unstable, fragile one that we all had to kind of bow to. And in some family
Okay.
systems, it's the mom, and it varies. But for us, it was my dad. And he kind of set the tone and set the stage. And when I look back on the high control religion we were a part of, all the messaging I was getting was get married. Like, yeah, go to college, be a nurse. But ultimately, you need to get married, and you need to be a good wife, and you need to have kids, and you need to follow this kind of set order of what women are supposed to do and how men are kind of in charge. So for my dad, he was very patriarchal in the way that he led our house, even the word lead, my gosh,
Uh-huh.
and how he was over my mom, and she was kind of submissive, this type of dynamic. And that was not the way I was. Okay, I was because I was the golden child. So I learned how to do that. But there was like this natural fire in me.
Mm-hmm.
I was told by my eighth grade teacher that I was this little feminist. And I brought that word home to my parents. And I was so excited because I was like, I have this new word. And
Oh.
he's the most brilliant teacher I've ever had. And he called me this word, and I didn't know what the word meant. And my parents were like, oh no, like that's not your word. That's a bad word. You don't want to be that word. And my word like floated away, but I kept it. I hid it deep
Mm-hmm.
within me somewhere. And it was always there, this like fire and drive and passion to like advocate for people and to see outside the status quo. It's just in the role that couldn't really be nurtured, only in
Mm-hmm.
like very little ways that didn't threaten the system. So I was in this patriarchal system, but I couldn't maintain it any longer, and that's my relationship with my partner wasn't that way. We were
Mm-hmm.
equal,
Yeah.
and when I started having these questions and started rocking things, rocking the boat in our families, he didn't like quiet me. He listened to me because he
Mm-hmm.
respects me and he loves me and he wanted to hear what I had to say. And that dynamic was just so threatening to my dad because that's not how he operated. So I think a lot of my unraveling and like self-reclamation was in large part like going against those conditioned systems that believed a woman should be the all women should be golden children.
Yeah.
And if they're not, they're scapegoated. They're seen as like the Jezebels, or they're seen, any kind of characterization that you give a rebellious woman. That all comes from the patriarchy. And I had to buck up against that. And it's a big part of kind of how I got discarded,
Yeah.
because I no longer offered that submission.
Yeah. Were you ever able to like talk to your mom or your siblings about any of this, or was it sort of
Mm,
like known that you just had your partner, your husband?
yeah, my mom was like one and the same with him. Like
Yeah.
there was no deviation. One time we had a talk. She actually came and visited us here in Thailand, like 8 months after we moved here, and I had a really good talk with her. And I felt like the curtain like opened for a minute, and she
Mm-hmm.
kind of got what I was saying, about how he was coming off and how aggressive he was, and how people took it, and how he was like harming people with his rhetoric. And um, she listened to me and she said, let me think about it and let me talk to dad. Well, she went home and
Yeah.
talked to dad. And a few
Yeah.
weeks later, I got the call, like, your dad disagrees with you and I'm not going to discuss this further. That was the kind of
Okay.
control and dynamic. And my siblings, unfortunately, they just knew me as the golden child who got everything I wanted. So as soon as I started to say, like, listen, mom and dad are actually mistreating me now,
Yeah.
and I'm this is happening here, trying to show them what was happening. It was immediate. Shut the hell up. Like, that you've been fucking spoiled your whole life. There's
Yeah.
nothing here. Just stop. Just stop. And so the only way that they could make space for me is if I just closed my mouth and got back in line and bowed my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah. You mentioned 2020. So that was like the time of the pandemic. And I know so many people's lives changed during the pandemic. And what I mean by is when like the world is like shutting down, you have a lot more time to like not be so busy. So you can start realizing like what's making you happy, what's not making you happy, where you're just sort of in fight or flight, or where you're just going with the motion and life is like passing you by. I know so many people whose lives changed. They changed careers. They got divorced, they started drinking or they stopped drinking. Like so
Right.
many things happen. Would you say just having that shutdown just gave you like a huge life pause to really get clear on all this stuff? Or was it already happening before that?
Yeah, no, it was. It is crazy how much 2020 shifted things. I have a friend who said like nothing that wasn't real survived 2020. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Ooh, you gave me
whoa,
chills again. Jeez.
woo, so much truth to that, right?
Yeah.
That was definitely a big part of it. We came back to America and got stuck there because flights right around March when it all went down. We were supposed to only be there for 2 weeks and we got stuck. So we ended up being, quote, stuck in America, unable to fly back to our home where our schools were, work, everything was in Thailand. And we ended up staying in this pond. We called it the pond house. Someone offered us a house that was empty. It was so gracious on a pond in the middle of like the forest. It was so serene and so beautiful. And this like little pond log cabin became the space of like deep, deep grief work and transformation because
Wow.
we couldn't leave it. And it was also the middle of winter in upstate New York for like 6 months. And we couldn't see anyone because it was COVID. And this is when my parents started not this is when they sorry, I'm forgetting the word for when you don't get back to people, when you stiff arm, when you cold I can't remember the word, when you it doesn't matter what the technical word is, but basically their whole posture towards us completely changed and they iced us out.
Okay.
And so we're in this cabin and we're faced with like the faith system we're in, we're not sure we believe. The political tropes we've been told our whole lives are falling apart. Everything's just like being questioned and everything's being re-examined. And um, it was so much traumatic loss that year, but it was like a fertile ground for transformation.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't look like this beautiful, shiny transformation. It looked like death
Yeah.
and loss and grief, so much grief.
Yeah. That's very, it takes a lot of courage. And I always mention to people like, listen, staying the same in pain is a lot of work. Being this golden child, being this good girl, going with
Yeah.
the flow and living in this cage, it's a lot of work. But healing is a lot of work as well. They're both a lot of work and very hard, but one leads to your true joy and happiness and
That's right.
living the life that you're meant to live and becoming the person that you're meant to be. And one, you stay the same. So either way, it's a lot of work. It just depends on where you want to be,
Yep,
you know?
exactly.
Yeah. Do you
I
find
echo that.
yourself still quite religious?
No, actually, a lot of those we outgrew that as well, which it was just kind of made so much, made it such a season of deconstruction and like
Mm-hmm.
having to reconstruct our whole lives after that because we both grew up in the same high control Christian religious um, denomination. And it was what we built everything on. Like it was our
Yeah.
foundation, just like our families were. So we
Yeah.
kind of lost like family and not kind of, we definitely lost family and our faith at the same time, which they were so interconnected. So it makes sense why we lost. They fed each other. The
Mm-hmm.
dysfunction in both high control systems fed one another completely. But we have definitely taken steps back from that and have a much more like open, um, expansive, kind of mystical, like our faith now is more like there's so much mystery. We don't know. There's so much that we don't know and that we can't know. And so it's completely different than what it was. Everything we were based on was certainty
Yeah.
and proof and theology and telling people how wrong they were. Uh,
Yeah. There's a lot to grieve, not only people in your life, but things that were such part of your foundation. What has that grieving process been like for you?
hmm. Before this point, I really didn't know grief well, but grief has become um, such a friend, which is a weird word to call it, but it's become a lifestyle for me and the way that I've survived. Like without grief and acceptance, they both connect. Without them, I don't know how I could have moved to that place, like were talking about just a minute ago, of things having joy and abundance and like beauty. Without grief, like I would just still be stuck
Yeah.
completely in all this pain. And that doesn't mean like grief gets rid of the pain, but it helps you be with the pain and process the pain and make sense of the pain, even though it's senseless. You find meaning through the grief process. So for me, grief has it's looked like attunement to my body of how I'm feeling, what's coming up, what I'm thinking. And a lot of times I express that to someone, a lot of times my partner, maybe a friend, maybe I journal it. I move my body when I feel grief. I go on my yoga mat and I just move like spontaneous movements of it's a lot sometimes with tears, but the movement helps me to like allow the grief to course through my body and to do its magic work. I don't want to like make it sound like it's this fantasy thing, like it's fun. It's not. It's brutal,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it has a purpose and it comes to do its work. And if we
Yeah.
can yield to it and surrender to it, we can come out of each grief wave um, whole
Yeah.
and and authentic,
Yeah.
and that's a gift.
I think that's, I think growing up, so many people are in life are just like, what's my purpose in life? What am I here meant to do? And I was actually talking to somebody the other day. I was like, we put so much stress on us. I think that's what keeps us silent, with the shame and the guilt of, living our best lives and, being all of these things and figuring out what our purpose is. And I was just like, what if our purpose was just to live, like to feel joy and be happy and contribute love and compassion to
Mhm.
society? Like, what if like it was simply just living our lives, and I think like as whole, and everything,
Wow.
I just feel, would be much more simpler in life. Like we wouldn't stay in these toxic roles or these good
Yes.
girl labels. We would just like, what if the goal was just to live wholly?
Hmm.
Maybe we would own our healing and our authenticity like much sooner,
Yeah.
because life would just be like, that's it. Like you're born, you have this beautiful chance, and what if it's just for you to live wholly in this life?
Wow.
And I don't know. I think things would be so much simpler. You grow up with such a religious, strict background. What are your thoughts on forgiveness now? Because I know, I come from a very well. My parents were different religions, like Catholic and Christian, and a lot of my family members are very devout Christians. I actually, when I met my husband, converted to Judaism and fell my way through Judaism.
No
So I'm
way.
sort of the black sheep when it comes to that. But my outlook on forgiveness is very different. And I know that I've interviewed people or family members have always said, yes, but you forgive your parents, right? You have to forgive them. And I just say, you don't have to forgive. The most important is like forgiving myself for the way I treated myself and the things I allowed. But self forgiveness, I have found, is was crucial in my
Mhm.
healing. But you don't
Wow.
necessarily need the I'm sorry from the people that have hurt you, because you may be waiting a lifetime, and instead of, while you're waiting, then you're not living. So I don't know, but I'm always interested to see, especially from your religious background, like, what are your thoughts on forgiveness?
It definitely is like a triggery word for me.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you have the perspective you have, because some people, I think it's rare, but there are some people in the healing world that are like tout forgiveness,
Yeah.
sorry, as this like be all end all, and that you can't heal if you don't forgive and all this crap.
Yeah.
Um, I believe it's more for me, the word is acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
That is how I come to terms with reality and live in reality and integrate my full self and not
Yeah.
have parts of me disjointed and in denial or other defense mechanisms that I'm trying to cope with. It's like me accepting reality has just changed everything. Um, when I finally accepted reality that they were not going to attune to me, that they were not going to see me, that they were going to stay blank face, flat affect, uncaring, unmoved by my pain, by my grief, by my suffering. Um, that's when I was able to start grieving,
Yeah.
is when I accepted that and didn't think, oh, well, if I just say this differently, if I can just like communicate it in a really good way, if I can just be a really respectful daughter that will like show them how much I love them, then they will attune to me and then they will care. I, I stopped doing that. I
Yeah.
stopped thinking, oh, if only. And I accepted the reality was that they were grown adults. And if they wanted to
Yeah.
do those things, they could choose to do them. And they were not choosing to do them. And I could accept that that is the reality of my story.
Yeah.
And I think acceptance is where freedom comes for me, not so much forgiveness.
Yeah.
And as I've grown, I've definitely been able to understand more of the why behind their rigid system that they need to cope, and how I stepped out of that and they didn't know what to do. Like I can have empathy and cognitive understanding of maybe why some of these things have happened, but that doesn't mean that I need to um, wash their hands of their
Right.
choices
Right.
and the very real harm and trauma they brought to my life and to my children's lives. I don't feel the need to do that.
Yeah. I think that's very well said. And it's almost like, when you realize you're worthy is not attached to their choices and decisions, I feel like acceptance comes like easier, because
Yeah.
I feel like so many of us stay in that situation trying to tiptoe and, shape shift ourselves because we want them to like make the right choice. We want them to love us. We want them to change. But when you
Yeah.
realize that no matter what you do, like your worthiness has nothing to do with
Mhm.
their behavior and actions. It's just you're trying to change somebody that you have no control over changing.
That's right.
You brought up your kids, and I wanted to ask you, because someone like myself that has two young kids, I've
Mm.
been estranged from my mother since before they were born. Um, what do your kids? I don't know how old your kids are, but what do they ask you about this, or what do you tell them about
Mhm.
estrangement?
Yeah. Yeah, they're all teenagers now because we did the whole get married super early, have kids early. That was the whole religious thing.
Mm-hmm.
They saw it all. They've been here for all of it,
Okay.
unfortunately, and maybe fortunately, I don't know. Who knows what's best, but they were very, very close to my parents.
Okay.
Sleepovers on the weekends, special birthday meals, special parties, all the things. And when we became estranged, those things obviously all went away. Um, and the losses are huge.
Yeah.
So I'm very open. My two older teens are going to read Golden Child. I've read them some of the scenes along the way, but they now that it's out and there's an audiobook, they both want to listen to it
Yeah.
and kind of hear the whole narrative together. Because they were also 5 years ago, they were, younger and They don't know everything. So I'm fine with them the ages that they're at, knowing the whole
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And we're just really open. The way that we parent now is very different from the way that we were parented. And that's one of the things that happens for all of us, right? We begin to be cycle breakers and we
Mm-hmm.
start changing how things go so that our families can be more healthy and we can break some of these patterns. Like we're not going to get all of them healed. There's no way, but we can do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just really value openness and honesty and not having them take on the parental load. Like, we're the parents, you're the kids.
Yeah.
You don't need to attune to me and make me feel better. That's what daddy's for. And that's what
Yeah.
my friends are for. But you get to be part of my world. And if you have questions, I'm going to answer them.
Yeah.
And so I've answered questions, and I've also tried to not demonize my parents
Yeah.
in the sense that, like, there's reasons why they're doing what they're doing. It doesn't make the reasons right.
Yeah.
It's dysfunction and
Yeah.
it's harmful. But they're not monsters. They're broken, and they've got a lot of stuff that they have never worked through and are choosing not to work through. And that's
Yeah.
why we can't have a relationship with them. And it
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah. I can understand that. That's I think open communication is key. You know, I plan to do sort of what you're doing. My kids are 7 and 10, so my oldest, we've talked a little more and more, not into like the details of the toxicity, but just how,
Sure.
mommy has to be healthy and happy to be a good mom, and I have to protect myself from anyone that would, not allow those things, even if it's,
That's right.
my mom. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I get that. Well, I want to say congratulations to the launch of your book, The Golden Child. Everyone can grab a copy on Amazon. I'm going to link it. I just would like to end on one final thing for everyone listening, because today's been a lot. How did leaving help you?
Mm. Leaving has helped me so much. Like, I don't ever want to leave out that part. I just feel it's so important to be honest about the grief. And the grief's been massive, and the grief continues, and the grief will be for the rest of my life. It's not going to stop. However, the relief and the freedom on the other side of the benefits are just as real. And I like to say I kind of hold both in each hand, grief in one hand, and the joy and the freedom and the ability to be my authentic self in the other. And they're both part of my story. Me being able to be my authentic self, all of us as humans have this drive to be fully us in the world and have our footprint, be our unique footprint in the world. And that gets suppressed by so many different ways, through conditioning and through family dysfunction. But when we can come up out of that and
Mm-hmm.
be able to figure out what that is and offer that to the world and to ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just about what we bring to the world. It's how we get to feel in our own skin.
Yeah.
Um, it's just such a gift. It's hard to, like, put words to it, of how
Yeah.
wonderful it is to be your full, um, abundantly, like, not that every day is abundance, but my life is full and abundant on this side of estrangement. I've lost a lot, but I've also gained so much, and the freedom is, it's just something I'm thankful for all the time, that I don't have that constant stress and trauma and feelings of, honestly, like, pain, that
Yeah.
I had such misattunement constantly, and that intermittent reinforcement of sometimes getting my needs met by them and sometimes being devastated. Being freed from that is costly, but it's also really, really wonderful. All the relationships I have in my life right now are reciprocating, mutually beneficial, loving, supportive relationships. And we're here because we want to be here. And I know that that's a privilege to have that, and I don't take it for granted.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. Well, I mean, for everyone listening, if Lauren's story doesn't just prove to you that we become the choices that we make, and I think that that's really our power, is that we have the power of choice. And
Mm.
honestly, any change we want in our life is really just a choice away. You just have to be so courageous to make the choices. Just make the choice.
That's right.
I want to thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your story. Congratulations on your book. The cover is gorgeous. I mean, let's see the cover. Yeah, it's
Thank
gorgeous.
you. I
Congratulations.
love it so much.
And I'm so excited for you. Where can everyone find you at?
So you can find me on Instagram or Facebook at flourish_therapy, or the book account is Golden Child Book, whichever one you want to follow. We do a lot of content on childhood trauma and reclaiming your full self after toxic family dynamics. And you can also find us on a website, flourishtherapy.co, and all the book information is on there too.
Thank you, Lauren, so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Cari.
Okay.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Surviving Roots. I hope it gave you something meaningful to carry with you. Let's keep this conversation going. Find me on Instagram at cari.fund, where I'll share more from the show. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs it. And remember, we are the choices that we make.